A lot of people think that organics is just about pesticide use, and while that's a significant part of it, there's a lot more to it than that.
Organic agriculture is a holistic way of producing crops that not only benefits the people consuming it, but also the planet and local ecosystems.
It starts in the soil, it starts in our attitudes, it starts in the way that we view the world. From an idea that we need to leave something for the next generations to the idea that feeding our soil, feeding the environment is ultimately how we can feed ourselves best. Everything matters. Every little detail of that matters. The four basic principles are the principle of health, ecology, fairness, and care. All of them tie together to explain how we go about farming.
So the principle of health focuses on not just the health of the humans who are eating the food, but the health of the ecosystems that are, supporting the crops that are being grown, and the health of the animals that thrive in that ecosystem. And recognizing all of these things as interconnected and interwoven, and respecting them as one. And that kind of feeds into the principle of ecology.
Organic is all about growing as part of an ecosystem rather than growing despite an ecosystem.
Organic agriculture ultimately mimics and enhances the natural ecosystem. We're not separate from nature, and ultimately we need to farm with nature in order for us to be prosperous.
Fairness. We talk about fairness in the way that we treat the world around us and the way that we treat other people that we're working with. And again, fairness to the next generations.
When we are operating organically, everything we are doing is with the utmost care. Care for each other, care for the environment, and you can see how all of these principles kind of weave into each other and work together.
When farmers first started farming, when we first as humans, as a species, started saving seed and planting it, we tried to farm within the bounds of what we knew of the world around us. We had no choice. We didn't have chemicals, we didn't have machinery, we didn't have tractors, we didn't have fancy cooling systems to keep things cold after we harvested. We didn't even really have an understanding of all of that and how it could impact things.
Well, a long time ago, nobody used chemical fertilizer or insecticides. For the most time in history, agriculture didn't have access to these tools. It was mostly after the Second World War where these materials were introduced.
When farmers started using chemicals in their production systems and more tractors and that sort of thing, some people started to notice negative impacts. It's going around 100 years that process of starting to use things that don't naturally occur around us and aren't part of the natural system, since that started. Very shortly after that started, what we had was people noticing negative impacts to their own health, negative impacts to the fields around them, to the waterways around them, and started questioning whether this new science was really, if this is what we should be doing.
Farmers got sick from seed treatments, like for my father, for example, got sick with mercury-based seed treatments, and that made him look for ways to farm without getting in contact with these materials. And so that was for him and for a lot of early organic farmers the motivation to farm without these materials.
And so they started really looking at how do we farm, what are we choosing as inputs on our farms, and what are we doing in the spaces around our crops and between crops, and what have we forgotten or dismissed that we shouldn't have, that we should have held on to, that we should have continued doing. That's where the ideas for organic certification and the whole organic program came from. And the first certification was started by a group who collectively decided, you know what, these are the principles, these are the foundational tenets that should make up a regulation.
And so today you find farms that work with chemicals and farms without. And with that came organic agriculture, with that came organic certification and everything we have today.
So I'm standing in a patch of buckwheat. It's in bloom. And you probably can't hear it, but I can hear hundreds of honeybees collecting nectar and pollen and pollinating the crop as I stand here. This is an example of why it matters what we do beyond the little piece of soil where our crop is growing. All of this biology matters to all of the rest of it. Without all of this, none of those crops actually can thrive. And that's one of the really important factors when we're talking about organic.
With organic practices where we're really trying to preserve the organic matter, and disturb it as little as possible and build on it, and where we're really trying to like promote that biodiversity in the soil, all of those things actually help, not only help the soil like retain its integrity, but that integrity is what helps the soil actually sequester some of that carbon out of the atmosphere and bring some of it back down to earth, which is what we need.
Organic agriculture at its core is to be stewards of the land and to preserve it for not only present generations but for future generations, which is the true essence of sustainability. As you can see, this small strip, this fence row, is adjacent to our field of what was dandelion is now harvested. By having, these areas for the soldier beetle and other species to be close to our crops, it gives them the ability to go from here to there with very little for them to feed on. The other thing to consider is that when pesticides and herbicides are used, it targets not just individual species, it targets everything, which is why we've seen such an increase in the decline of pollinator species, so monarch butterflies, bees, hoverflies. There is a lot of milkweed, both in the fields that we purposely leave, as well as in the fence rows. The disconnect in a lot of farms thinking that they're completely isolated from the local ecosystem that causes our food system to be in the peril that it is now. According to the FAO, there's approximately, give or take, globally, 60 years of arable and fertile topsoil left. That is 60 growing seasons, and it's counting down every year. This soil degradation comes from either poor farming practices, devoiding the soil of all the beneficial micronutrients and microorganisms, but also the overusage of synthetic fertilizers like nitrogen and phosphorus that throw off the global nitrogen and phosphorus cycles that are naturally occurring.
We don't wait for something to happen and then react to it. We try to set up a situation, an environment on the farm that enables plants to be healthy, that creates balance in the soil, creates balance in the plants that are growing, and creates balance within the microorganisms and macroorganisms that enable the plants to stay healthy and to have pests and diseases stay in check. We can't and shouldn't be trying to get rid of all of the insects that eat our crops. We should just look for them to not overwhelm the ecosystem, because that's nature, that's balance. That is what that principle of ecology is all about.
A diverse crop rotation is our best solution to handle pests, whether it be insects or soil pathogens, or pathogens of any kind.
Fence rows provide wildlife with shelter and food, as well as a corridor for travel. By providing these corridors, a diverse species of animals and beneficial predatory insects assist farmers with insect control that rivals today's insecticides. For instance, a variety of plants lure and support pollinators and other beneficial predatory insects and coax them to the fields. Fence rows and hedgerows control and mitigate erosion, which helps prevent the loss of topsoil and the pollution of waterways.
With organic agriculture and us applying a nutrient management concept and compost and cover crops and crop rotation, we don't have as many insect and disease pressures, but we still have some. So it is something to manage, because in most cases a disease in the field is only the symptom to another problem. In conventional agriculture, you can address this problem or symptom by applying a chemical to make it go away. That has other side effects. In organic agriculture, we don't have those tools available, so we need to study what causes the problem in the first place.
You might find a few bugs in your lettuce. Don't panic, it's organic. There's ways to deal with that, right? So it's totally normal, totally safe. And the simplest way to deal with that is, make a little bath, put some salt in it, give them a nice bath, put on some music, light a candle. No, you don't have to do all that. But yeah, not all organic produce is infested with bugs. But yeah, occasionally we will see that kind of thing.
We see the people in the background, they're weeding carrots. So we have mechanical equipment that goes through the field to scuffle in between the rows, and then right in the row the people are manually doing it. Our land base is limited. It's not easy to get more land, and with a growing demand in organic food, we're constantly short land. So we have to manage our land inventory very tight. We have insects to deal with, we have labor shortages to deal with, we have transportation issues to deal with. One of our biggest challenges that we have is out of control operating cost. Everything is increasing in cost that we buy as parts and supplies and whatever it is, way faster than we can raise prices on the product. It's very important for us to get good at what we do and get better at what we do to be able to manage that. The consumer gets the assurance that the product is actually organic if it says it's organic. Anybody can claim anything to be organic, but if the consumer buys a packaged product with a certification seal, then the consumer knows these third-party agencies certify that it is actually true.
It's been through a rigorous program of organic certifications where everything is measured and tested to ensure that our processes are organically compliant.
All of those things create integrity in the system so that if you're buying produce that has the Canada Organic logo on it, what that means. You can rest assured that there is an inspection process that verifies that we're doing what we've said we will do.
The price lookup code, or the PLU. This PLU starts at 9 and it's 4090. So in Canada, if you have organically certified produce, it will indicate somewhere in the labeling that says certified organic by, and usually the certifying body. One more item that's important is the lot numbering system, and this tells us when the spinach is packed, and this helps us with our traceability in case you have any issues, helps us keep our whole supply chain accountable from harvest all the way up to the consumer.
The impacts that human beings have had on the world are real, tangible, and they're happening in front of us at an exponentially faster pace. With organic, all of the things that we do continue to impact the world, but we're trying to have a lighter step to impact the world less, so that we don't continue this rapid destruction of habitat, of our own habitat. It's not just the bees and birds and animals' habitat that we're destroying, it's our own. And with it, our own ability to survive.
Many consumers buy organic food or decide to buy organic food. In the past, more people bought organic for health reasons. But what we've noticed over the years, more and more consumers start buying organic food because they learned about the environment. Consumers feel responsible in a way.
People buy organic for all kinds of reasons. Part of it is the flavor. A lot of people notice really like pronounced flavor, and where that comes from is actually from the soil. And I think that really comes down to making a difference with your food choices, and that's really the biggest advantage, the impact that you can have on the environment and on your community. So it makes sense to be adopting growing practices that help us to mitigate the impacts of climate change.
They are voting with their dollar and supporting a certain type of industry that they feel comfortable with.
It's really important to know the farmer and know the grower and understand their stories and understand their challenges. You know, learn more about your food. The best way you can do that is probably through connecting with them through social media. A lot of farms have social media accounts. You can follow them. You can comment on their posts and ask them questions. You'll probably learn some things along the way. You know, we can't always all make it out to the farmers market all the time and have these lovely conversations, but we can still make those efforts every day.
Symbiotic relationships are the core of what we do. You know, we want to produce the highest quality food for the people consuming it, but also look after nature.
But when you're choosing organic, you're choosing this. You're choosing a world that's supporting this ecology. You're choosing a production system that recognizes and values every piece of the environment that it touches, and all the ones that are connected tangentially. These bees, their lives, you're supporting that through buying organic, through selling organic. If you're the person who's putting it on the shelf for consumers to purchase, you're participating in making sure that this stays part of our world, that this stays healthy, that this whole planet can actually stay healthy and continue to nourish us.
It's really a beautiful thing.